go. Okay, so we're in 201B.1. We should have already done this, so I'm just going to kind of skip through it a little bit because this was sort of last week's chapter. So some of the terms that you're going to need to know are bacteria. Bacteria means a one-celled microorganism. Viruses require host to multiply. External parasites and fungus, which are like head lice, ringworm, those are examples of parasites and fungus or fungal parasites. An infection is caused when a bacteria or virus enters the body, and immunity is your body's ability to destroy the infectious agents. Those are some terms that you're going to need to know the definitions of, because these are easily transmitted from one person to another. It's important that we know how they multiply and how we can not spread these around the shop. So here we go. Microbiology definition: study of small living organisms. Micro meaning small. Bio means living, and ology is the study of. So this is what's going to help prevent the spread of disease. So like we said, bacteria are one-celled microorganisms, also known as germs or microbes. There's two types. You have pathogenic and non-pathogenic. Non-pathogenic bacteria do not produce any disease. This is the type of bacteria that you need to, like, if a tree falls down in the woods, what's it going to do? How's it going to get rid of that tree and turn it back into nature? With non-pathogenic bacteria. Does not produce disease, can be beneficial. So this word saprophytes, this is what lives on dead or decaying matter. It's not going to hurt you, but this is what it takes to make those trees decay back in, into the woods. So that's called a saprophyte. 70% of all bacteria out there is non-pathogenic. Some of them live on your skin, in your mattresses, everywhere. It's not going to hurt you. Pathogenic bacteria. This is what causes disease. This is what's going to hurt you. This is infection and disease. Some produce toxins. These also live everywhere and spread very easily. And they come in three basic shapes, and you do need to know those shapes. So some of the examples of what's spread from person to person, which is known as contagious or communicable. Those are two words you're going to need to know too, is contagious and communicable. That is a cold, hepatitis, measles, just about anything that you can pick up from somebody else's spread. Okay. So like I said, you're going to need to know the three shapes of bacteria. So here's what they are. You have Streptlicoxy, which is known as staph, right? We've all heard of staph infection. So pus forming, found in abscesses, pustules, and boils, referred to as staph. So what this is it grows in a bunch. So if you have a staff of people, you have a bunch of people. Okay, so it grows in a bunch, grows in a cluster. All of these, since they're bacteria, they're all pus forming. But these are going to cause things like staph infection, abscesses, pustules, and boils. Okay. The next one we're going to look at is Streptlicoxy. We've all heard of strep throat, right? This is what it causes, strep throat. This is also pus forming, and these form in chains. These grow in chains. So if you have a strip of something or a strep of something, it's like a chain, like a strip of something is like a long chain. So that's how I remember that one. And then if you have the Disinfection, these grow in pairs and they cause things like pneumonia. So di is like 2, okay? So those are the three round shapes. Now, all of these are round, right? They're all like Staphylococcus, Streptlicoxy, Disinfection, and they're all round in shape. So if you can't remember what the shape is, look at all those C's, COCCI. That's all kind of round. COCC, they're all kind of round. So you'll know that these grow round. You just got to remember that they grow round, that they have a strip, a pair, or a cluster, and then they They cause bacteria, all of them, and they produce things like staph infection, strep throat, and pneumonia. Bacilli is rod-shaped. This is the most common bacteria. This one causes fever. So chances are, if you've ever had a fever and you went to the doctor and they're like, oh yeah, you got an infection, this is what caused it right here, this bacilli. This is just the most common out there. It causes all kinds of things. They just can't list what those are. But bacilli is rod-shaped. And I know Miss Jeannie has some really something about a hot rod. Oh, a hot rod, because it causes fever. Fever makes you hot. So hot rod is bacilli. And then spirilla, man, this isn't going very nicely today. It's not scrolling smoothly. Spirilla is spiraled or corkscrew shaped, right? This causes highly contagious diseases such as syphilis, which is an STD, cholera, or Lyme disease. You look at this, you see spirally shaped. So spirilla, corkscrew, syphilis, cholera, Lyme disease, that's what it causes. So those are the most common types of bacteria, and those are the ones that are going to be on your test. So you've got the coxes, which are round, you've got the bacilli, which is a rod, and then you've got the spirilla, which is a corkscrew. Okay, so they all cause you to be sick. So bacteria grows. It has two stages. You have an active stage and an inactive stage, right? Active is when it's actively growing, and active is when it's not. So this is what you need to know about this. The active stage, this is where bacteria reproduces and grows rapidly. It does require dark, damp, and dirty places with a food source for it to grow, like the corner of your shower, right? The inactive stage is when these conditions become unfavorable. So you spray some kind of a disinfectant on it. It's an unfavorable condition. They either die or they form spores. So if you look at the back of some of the disinfectant sprays that are out there, in the stores, you'll see where it says that it's not effective against spores. It says it kills 99.9% of all bacteria, but it's not effective against spores. So what spores are is certain types of bacteria, when we're trying to kill them, they have a protective mechanism built into their bacteria, into their cell. So it's called a spore. So it's like a protective coating. It just forms around these spores right here, and they just become dormant at that point in time. Then when the conditions become favorable again, they lose that spore, and then they go back to being active and reproducing. So, a lot of times when you're spraying stuff, like it never quite goes away, or it comes back when you're trying to kill stuff. And that's because of the spores that are formed. Okay. So they grow or we kill them. Active and inactive, right? Inactive is when it's in that spore stage. Okay, so then bacteria moves. How does it move? Well, moves through the air, moves through the dust, moves through people being, touching each other. Bacilli and spirilla move themselves using little hair-like projections called flagella or cilia. You need to know what flagella and cilia are. They're little hair-like projections that move the bacilli or the spirilla around. And that's how it travels around. Okay. Bacteria can be caused or can be killed on your body if you have like a bacterial infection with an antibiotic. Okay, viruses are smaller than bacteria. That's why it's harder for them to kill. And antibiotics usually do not work on viruses because they're smaller than bacteria. These can cause familiar diseases like the common cold, measles, and hepatitis. Right now we got COVID, right? It's another virus out there. These do require a host to multiply. So guess what? You're the host. With antibiotics and vaccinations can be a problem. That's why we get those childhood vaccinations, right? Because it helps. So we don't get these types of viruses out there, like mumps. What is it? Mumps, whooping cough, polio. We all get these viruses. or these vaccinations. So some viruses that are out there are hepatitis A, hepatitis B, human immunodeficiency virus, which is HIV, and then human papillomavirus, which is HPV. So look at HAV, HBV, HIV, HPV. I mean, that could be super confusing, right? So hepatitis A, which now they have vaccinations for a lot of these hepatitises too. So hepatitis A is transmitted from person to person with contact or drinking contaminated water. Hep V and Hep C are bloodborne pathogens. These cause highly infectious diseases affecting the liver. They do have vaccines now, and it's often recommended for people who work with the public. Okay, and then HIV is human immunodeficiency, which can lead to AIDS, right? Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. This interferes with the body's natural immune system, which causes the immune system to break down, spreads when fluids from an infected individual are absorbed into the bloodstream of an unaffected individual. And then HPV is human papillomavirus. This can lead to such health problems such as genital warts, plantar warts, cervical changes, and cervical cancer, depending on which strain you pick up of that, if you get it. A lot of people have had just a regular wart, which was a human papillomavirus, but it's just a plain old wart, right? You get some little compound W and it goes away. Or the doctor will take it off. Okay, so now we have external parasites and fungus. Okay, these are nasty little creatures. It doesn't matter, what your gender is, what your race is. I mean, they don't care. They're just gonna go on wherever they can find a host. And guess what? You're the host. So they need a host to survive. Definitely needs a host to survive. These are things like itch mites, known as scabies, head lice, which is pediculosis capitis, very easily transmitted, usually accompanied by like a little rash or itchy. And you can control these with certain types of shampoo, but it doesn't do you much good to do the shampoo or the creams that you put on for the itch mites or those scabies if you don't clean your sheets and your bedding and things like that, because they're still gonna be there. Lice is nasty. I've dealt with it so much with my granddaughter. It is the nastiest stuff out there. They're just a pain in the butt. Because all the cleaning you have to do. Okay, so then you have parasitic funguses, which is like a mold and a yeast. These things produce things like ringworm, okay, ringworm of the scalp, which is Tinea capitis, ringworm, which is tinea. So remember, tinea is the technical term for ringworm. You do have to know that. Honeycomb ringworm, which is known as Favis. And then it can cause some conditions like dandruff or seborrhea dermatitis, which is stubborn dandruff. Remember, dandruff is not contagious, but ringworm definitely is contagious. Okay, so those are some of the things you need to know about yeast and stuff like that. And there's a lot of the diseases and disorders of the scalp that they kind of like all look the same. So you don't know if it's ringworm or if it's just psoriasis sometimes, because they do kind of look the same. I mean, lice, you can tell definitely, because you can, once they've had them long enough, you can see them. But most of the time you'll see the eggs on the lice before you actually see the bug, because they're so small. They're so small. All right, so there's these 6 signs of infection right here: pain, swelling, redness, local fever, throbbing, and discharge. Okay, so what happens when you get an infection? Well, an infection is caused by the bacteria or the virus that enters the body and multiplies to the point where it interferes with the body's normal state of functioning. So let's take a pimple for an example. A pimple is bacteria, right? The bacteria enters into that pore, multiplies it to where it's causing, the oil gland and the hair follicle and all of that not to work like it's supposed to. It's interfering with it. So your body says, hey, there's this bacteria right here in my pore, go get rid of it. So your white blood cells come to the rescue and they surround that bacteria, which now becomes pus, right? So once you pop that pimple, which you're not supposed to do, you're supposed to let the white blood cells do its job by destroying that bacteria, and then, kind of like your body will eliminate it naturally. But what do? We wake up, we see this pimple, we see this pus, and we're like, oh no, we're going to pop this and get rid of it. So we pop it and then we just smear it on our face. So what happens? That bacteria is not really dead. You just spread it on your face. So then, have you ever popped a pimple and then woke up the next day and had another pimple? Or maybe that same one is still there, and that's because the bacteria is still there. It's not dead. It's just continuing to multiply. So we have these 6 signs of infection. Pain. Sometimes those pimples are very painful. Swelling. Yep, it gets nice and red and swollen. Redness, because it's red. Local fever. Does it feel warm to the touch? Throbbing. Now you're definitely not going to know if it's throbbing. The client will have to tell you, but you could feel it if it's throbbing, right? That's like having your heartbeat there. And then discharge would be your pus. And those are your 6 signs. Definitely need to know that. If you have those, you have infection. If you have just a few of them, you could still have infection. It just hasn't got to that point yet where it's bad enough to have all 6. So how do you get infections? Well, through direct transmission, indirect transmission, contagious infection, microorganisms, or bloodborne pathogens, right? So direct transmission is spread through touch or exchange of bodily fluids. And any kind of bodily fluid, depending on what it is. It could be, saliva, it could be blood, it could be other bodily fluids. You could touch something that is contaminated, an object like a doorknob. You could, go to open a door and have the bacteria on it, and then rub your face or rub your eyes or something, scratch your skin, and you could get it. Okay. Contagious infection, just like I said, you could scratch yourself and you would have it. You can transmit through touch or air from person to person. That's how you get indirect. You can have microorganisms, which could spread to a new person frequently. It can cause no infection unless it actually enters the body, but you would have to have it, going through like your mouth, your ears, your nose, your eyes, any openings of your body. Or if you have an open cut or something, it can actually travel in through there. Or if you scratch yourself and you break the skin, it could travel in through there also. And then bloodborne pathogens go through the blood or bodily fluids. So if you cut someone, it could happen. Could get a tattoo, it could happen. You could get a piercing, it could happen. It just can be spread anytime the skin is broken. So common ways it happens in the barbershop. Open sores. Okay, let's think about that pimple on the back of somebody's neck and you didn't see it, or that ingrown hair that is got that pus in it, and you went over it with your clippers. Boom, you just opened that up. Okay, unclean hands and implements. Again, you don't clean your clippers after you went over that guy's broken ingrown hair, and you use it on the next person, and you don't sanitize your hands in between right there. Coughing or sneezing. Yeah, that happens. Common use of drinking cups and towels. I'm not so sure about the drinking cups being used, but towels, if you don't get a clean towel after each person, could happen. Use of the same implements on infected and non-infected areas. In other words, clean your stuff. And then unsanitary shop conditions. Don't clean your station, don't clean your chair, don't clean your drape. It can happen. If you have a contagious disease, practice infection control procedures not to spread it. So when you have an infection, you have 2 types of an infection. You have a local infection and you have a general infection. Basically, the way to remember that is a local infection is in one spot. It's locally. It's just in that one area. So let's say you've cut yourself and it's became infected. You have a pimple. Anything that, is just in one spot is local. General is when it goes through your whole body. It's in your bloodstream. It's systemic. It's traveling around your body. So you could have someone that's known as an asymptomatic carrier. And that's what they're saying some people are with COVID too. This is someone who carries this disease, but they're not sick by it. They show no signs of infection. I know during the time in the, what was it, late 1800s, early 1900s, when typhoid fever was a thing out there, there was a lot of people who were asymptomatic carriers during that time because they would get other.
Miss Connie,
Ah,
I have to exit out of here real quick, and then I'll be right back in like 5 minutes.
okay.
I gotta answer a phone call. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, asymptomatic carriers are the reason why you want to treat everyone like they have the worst possible disease ever. And that is known as a standard precaution. This is using the same infection control procedures with every single client and treating everybody like they have the worst disease you've ever came across. And that is why we do this, right? Protection. We're protecting ourselves, we're protecting the public. So in order to protect ourselves, we have this thing called immunity in our immune system. It is the body's ability to destroy infectious agents that enter the body. Now, we could be coming into contact with stuff like every single day, but because we're healthy, like our body's going to fight it off right away. Even if that enters into our body, we're healthy enough to where our body is going to kill it, right? On some things. So we have two types of immunity in our body. We have active immunity and we have passive immunity. I always get these confused too, so I need to make sure I read this correctly. Active immunity is what your body produces after exposure to disease. Okay, the disease exposure through infection or vaccination takes time to develop, but it lasts a long time. So you get chickenpox, right? You get over it, don't get chickenpox again because your body's developed the immunity to it. Or you go get a vaccination for chickenpox, right? This one takes a time to get over it. Right now, the big vaccination in the news is COVID. People are saying that, after they get the COVID vaccination, some of them feel sick. Well, what do they do during these vaccinations? They introduce a small amount of that virus or whatever they are trying to vaccinate you against into your body. So could it make you feel a little bit sick? Yes, it could. But what's happening is your body is fighting it off. And that's why you feel that way during a vaccination. If you look at babies, every time they get shots, they do get kind of sick and irritated for a while and they don't feel good. And that's because their body's fighting off that whatever they gave them to whatever the vaccination was for. Their body's fighting that live stuff and killing it so that you develop that immunity. And then your passive immunity is where antibodies are given versus producing through the immune system. It's immediate protection, but it only lasts a few weeks or a couple months. So like if you go out of country or something and you have to have a vaccination or a shot before you go, into this other country, it's going to be immediate protection against whatever that has that you're trying to not catch over there in a different country. So true or false, microbiology is the study of living organisms called microbes. What do you think, Ruben? You think that's true or false?
False.
Okay, I think you're right. True or false? Bacteria are one-celled microorganisms. What do you think, Nick? True? Yeah, I think it's true too. Okay. A disease that spreads from one person to another via contact is referred to as contagious or what? What do we got on that one?
I don't know. What is it?
It's communicable,
Oh,
which
okay.
is strange. I think that's a strange word to even say, communicable. I could get stuck on that. Communicable. Communicable. Strange.
Communicable.
Yeah. Strange word. Okay, spherical bacterial cells that appear singularly or in groups are known as, it's just going to be bacteria. It's a fancy way of saying bacteria. Okay, because spherical is meaning round, right? Bacterial cells that appear singularly or in groups are the coccobacterias. So they're known as bacteria. Rod-shaped bacterial cells that can produce a variety of diseases, including tetanus and diphtheria, are called, that's the bacilli. 2 stages of growth are active and this would be inactive. Submicroscopic particles that cause familiar diseases like the common cold are referred to as, and that's going to be a virus. An organism that lives or obtains nutrients from another organism or host is called an external
Parasite.
parasite. Yeah. The practice of using the same infection control procedures with all clients is called
Standard precautions or
yeah, standard precautions, or it could be
general precautions or
yeah, universal.
universal precautions. Okay.
Yeah, but I think they're using standard precautions more. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the body's ability to destroy
Immunity. General something immunity.
the body's ability is, I think it's just immunity. I think it would just
Okay.
be immunity in total, whether it's passive or acquired, it's just going to be immunity.
Okay.
All right, let's see what we got. Come on, work. It's not scrolling very good today. Okay. Oh, they're both true. Look at that. Called microbes. Okay. Communicable, cocci, bacilli. Okay. Let's see. Inactive, viruses, parasites, standard precautions, immunity. All right. Good job. Let's pull up the next one. And let's see, microbiology, infection control. Kind of going through this one really fast. Infection control. So the first aid portion is the last portion of this chapter. It's pretty simple. I mean, you know, so go ahead and do that one on your own there, because, you know, it's like, what do you do when someone's choking? What do you do when someone faints and that type of stuff? Because we'll have a test on this probably, I'm going to say Friday. Okay. So when we talk about infection control, there's 3 types that we're going to go through: cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. Sterilization is something that you are not going to do. You are going to do the cleaning and you're going to do the disinfection. Okay, so this is important to do. Should I say that everybody could be cleaning a little bit better? Yeah, I am going to say that, because I fall right into that category where I feel that we could be cleaning just a little bit better than what we do. Okay, so cleaning is the first standard, the first infection control method of prevention. This applies to just removing the dirt, debris, and potential pathogens to slow the growth of pathogens. Pathogens just means something that's going to make you sick. Okay. So cleaning, wiping things down with soap and water, washing them off, wiping them off, that type of thing. Disinfection is the standard required to destroy or kill certain pathogens, bacteria, fungus, viruses, okay, with the exception of spores. So the little pink spray that we have around here, this thing is 99% effective within 1 minute. Contact. So by the time you get, it's going to kill about 9% of the stuff once you spray it and wipe it off. So use it. The spray disinfectant that you used for the clippers, it's a 10-minute contact time. So you wipe all the debris off, you're cleaning. You get your brush, you remove all that hair, that's cleaning. You set it down, you spray it with your disinfectant, it's a 10-minute contact time. At the end of 10 minutes, you wipe it off, you put it away. Same thing with your implements. It's going to kill 100% once you put your combs in that disinfectant solution for 10 minutes, but you have to put it into that solution correctly, which means washing it off with soap and water, right? You brush and you remove all the hair out of it. You wash it with soap and water, then you dry it, and then you place it into the disinfectant solution. You have to think that that disinfectant solution is killing 100% of any kind of viruses, funguses, bacteria after a 10-minute contact time. If it's killing all of that and you're sticking your hands in there, what are you putting your hands in? Something pretty strong chemical. Don't do it. That's why you're supposed to wear gloves or use tongs to remove your items out. Now, sometimes I see people not doing this correctly. They're not washing their stuff off with soap and water. They're just taking it and throwing it in there with the hair on it and everything else in that disinfectant solution. It's not going to work. You've contaminated that disinfectant solution. It's not going to work correctly. So could that cause a potential spread of something? Yes. That disinfection solution needs to remain clean at all times. Now, when you buy them, like say you buy Barbicide, because that's another brand name. That's the blue or the purplish looking one. And then we have the Leukocyte here, which is the pink one. Doesn't matter. It all does the same thing. But it has dilution because it is super concentrated. So you have to dilute it down. You can't use it full strength. So you have to dilute it down for a broad spectrum disinfectant. They used to say hospital grade, and some of them may still say hospital grade, but it's the terminology is changing to become a broad spectrum disinfectant. You have to dilute it down and you have to use it correctly in order for it to be effective. So it's important to know how to do it correctly. I think you guys should all by now, right? And then sterilization kills everything, kills good bacteria, kills bad bacteria, kills absolutely everything. But, that's mostly done in like hospitals. It's not really so much done in the barbershop. We don't really have anything like that. So when we talk about the porous versus the non-porous, and then the contact time with the immersion, right? Porous. We talk about porous ends in the hair, but porous basically means that it is a material that allows liquid or air to pass through it, right? Non-porous is a material that has no pores and does not allow liquids to be absorbed or passed through, okay? Contact time is the amount of time a disinfectant product needs to be in direct contact. And then immersion, because it'll say total immersion on a lot of things. Immersion is soaking it in a disinfectant. All right, so cleaning, this removes the dirt and the debris and potential pathogens to slowing the growth of pathogens. It does not kill anything, but it could help reduce the growth, and it may require scrubbing to loosen up some of those pathogens. And it doesn't include sweeping up all the hair of their chair. I got this. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Look at the bottom of the chair. It was dirty. Clean it. always clean the bottom of my chair when I'm working. I mean, I wipe down my chair with the Lysol wipe and bend down Lysol wipe out the floor. I mean, you have to. Disinfectants and cleaning materials cannot be applied to the skin safely. I don't know about you guys, and I feel like little bumps. And I know it's because of all the hand sanitizers and all of the soap that I've been washing my hands in, because it's just not, my hands aren't moisturized. But sanitizer, antiseptic. Antiseptic is the word that is safe for use on the skin. Okay, it doesn't replace hand washing, and you can't use it to clean your tools or equipment. If you're using alcohol as an antiseptic for your skin, you need to have it be at least 70%. I don't know if you know that isopropyl alcohol comes in different percentages. A lot of times they'll use like a 99% on the nails, on people's nails, but 70% is what needs to be used on the skin. So you can buy it at like 65. I've seen it at the Dollar Tree for like 65, which isn't enough. So before you go to clean anything, you're supposed to wash your hands with soap and water. Clean and disinfect all surfaces before and after each use. Avoid touching your face, your mouth, or your eyes. Never place tools in your mouth or your pockets. So that's a state board thing too. If you put combs in your pockets or your shears or something, it's a fine. So not to mention it's kind of gross. So, I mean, in your pockets, you can have a pen, you can have keys, you know, you can have things like that. You just don't want to put any implements in your pockets or your mouth either. Yuck. I see people put bobby pins in their mouth all the time. I think it's gross. Dispense all powders with a shaker. If you think about it, all powder does have that little top with all the holes in it, and you can just shake it out so it comes like that. We want to use a pump or a spray, or if you have to, never stick your fingers in any type of an applicator. Always use a spatula or something like that that can be disposed of right away, and no double dipping, right? We want to use fresh towels or launder them after each client. Never use the same one. Use a new cape on each client now. Never allow the cape to touch the client's neck. That's why we use the Sanex strips, right? We want to keep our dirty towels in a covered container that actually is, you know, labeled soiled linens or soiled towels. We want to launder them in a timely manner, and we want to dry them thoroughly before we store them to avoid any stinky smell. We want to store them in a clean cabinet or towel or something that's covered and labeled actually. Our state has a health and safety regulations that we have to follow, because if not, you can definitely get fined if they come in, because they're going to start looking for those things on the inspections. We want to make sure that we deal with blood-stained items. Hopefully we don't ever have any, but you know, you can cut someone from time to time, shaving them, or maybe even cut their ear because they're kind of fleshy. But we want to make sure that we clean and remove everything before we disinfect. And after each client, before the client even gets up, you're supposed to sweep the floor. Don't let them get out of the chair with the hair on it. It's a nice slippery thing for them to fall on. So if you can't clean directly when you're finished, that's what the soiled container's for, right? You use the comb, you have another client waiting for you. You use the comb, you take the comb and you place it into your soiled container. You wipe off your clippers and you spray them with the disinfectant and set them down. Then you go and you sweep the hair up off the floor. You take the client's drape off and you let them leave. Then you clean your chair. You finish sweeping up the hair. And then by the time the next client sits down, you get them draped, and you've talked about the consultation. You're definitely going to be 10 minutes into that, and your clippers will be disinfected and ready for use again. Okay. When you finish using a shampoo bowl, you want to spray that with your disinfectant solution and wipe it down, or use a Lysol wipe and wipe that down. Make sure there's no hair in that trap. You know, hair in the trap of a shampoo bowl is I think it's $50 or $100 fine for a little hair in there. It's not even worth it. It takes you 2 seconds to clean that out. You have to have hot and cold running water, and you have to have some type of a drinking cup or provide water there. Like we have our vending machine, so we got water. Plus we have the filtered water in the sink back here. We never want to use the restroom for storage, which means in the restroom you can't have bottles of bleach or anything sitting on the floor. It needs to be all put up on a shelf. We're not supposed to have pets or animals except service animals. You don't want to live in the barber shop, and you want to keep it free from insects and rodents, so no rats running around. And smoking in designated areas only. Smoking is 20 feet from the door. Okay, so you want to maintain a temperature of about 70 degrees. Have change the filters, provide exhaust ventilation if you're using something that is chemical smell. Okay, so that's your cleaning. Now we have our disinfection, which is the second level of infection control. This kills certain pathogens and viruses, with the exception of spores, on surfaces that are non-porous. If surfaces are porous, it doesn't work. Okay, so disinfectants are chemicals, right? A disinfectant solution or disinfectant spray or disinfectant wipe or whatever, it's a chemical. It will destroy most bacteria and pathogens. So our EPA says that all of our, and EPA stands for Environmental Protection Agency, and it gives our disinfectants a number. We have an EPA registration number on them. They say that it has to be a bactericidal, a fungicidal, and a virucidal. Those must be on every single disinfectant that we use. If you read them though, you're going to see that it says the pseudomonacidals. You're going to see that it says it kills HIV on non-porous surfaces. And it has a few other little things on there too. So we definitely have everything on there that it needs to have to be as effective as we can have it. Okay. But remember, we have to follow manufacturer's directions because they're toxic. OSHA is your Occupational Safety and Health Administration. These guys right here enforce it in the workplace. They require that employees be informed of dangers of materials used in the workplace. They also require the SDS, the safety data sheets, and they also enforce product labeling. So our state regulatory agency now says that all of our products have to have an original label on them. So if you have your disinfectant solution and you pour it into a disinfectant tub, you have to have an original product label, which means you can just print it out and slap it on there. But that's part of what they say we have to have. If you take your gel and you pour it into a container, we used to be able to just label that container gel, but we can't do that anymore now. We have to like print off part of the label, the manufacturer label, and print that on there if we change our manufacturers. And that's something that our state board is saying that we have to do now. Everything has to have an original label, especially the chemical. Okay. So safety data sheets. For years, they were called MSDS, and then they changed it to SDS. But there's 16 portions of this, and each one of these talks about something different, like a product identification. It's going to tell you the manufacturer, where it came from, when it was made, what time it was made, when it was bottled, when it was shipped. It tells you everything that you need to know about that product. Hazard identification. What hazards could this possibly happen if it like spilled into the environment, or if we came in contact with like our eyes, or we breathed it too much. We don't really use chemicals like that though. So most of ours are pretty mild. Composition information, that's all the chemistry behind it. First aid measures. If you swallowed it, if you got it in your eye, you know, what do you do? Firefighting measures. So if something caught on fire, what kind of chemical do we have in there? So if you accidentally spilled it into the environment also. Handling and storage, how it should be stored. Does it need to be, you know, in a well-lit place, in a dark place, in a temperature-controlled environment? You know, how are we supposed to store this and handle it? Do we need to wear safety goggles? Are we wearing gloves? That type of thing. Exposure controls and personal protection. Again, how long can you be exposed to this chemical and what do we need to do to protect ourselves? Physical and chemical properties, that's the chemistry behind it again. Stability and reactivity, right? How stable is it? How's it going to react? Toxicology information, okay? How poisonous is it? Ecological information, if you dumped it down the drain, what's going to happen? Disposal consideration, how do you dispose of the product? Transport information, regulatory information, and the reversion date. That's all on there. Some of them you read, but now they have these little pictures that are now standardized for a lot of these different things. So if it's a health hazard, those are some of the health hazards you could have. A carcinogen, does it cause cancer? Are you going to mutate? Does it mess with your reproductive system? Does it mess with your breathing? Does it mess with your liver or your lungs or any of that other stuff? And how are you supposed to breathe it? That would be a health hazard. Is it flammable? Right? And that's the first, you can see the pictures. Pyrophorics, is it self-heating? Does it emit a flammable gas or does it react by itself or is it an organic? Exclamation mark means that it is an irritant to the skin and eyes. It could make your skin very sensitive. It could be harmful, could give you a narcotic effect. You could have a respiratory tract irritant or it could be hazardous to the ozone layer. And then that gas cylinder means it's under pressure, so it could explode. We have the other ones here, like corrosion, which could be burns, it could be eye damage, or it could be corrosive to metals. We have explosives, self-reactives, which I don't think we really see too much of that. But then we have oxidizers for over flame circles. All of our developers going to have that on it, probably. Haven't looked. Then we have the one that means it's the environment, harmful to the environment. The fish, it'll kill the fish. And then the skull and crossbones means you could die. It's going to be fatal or toxic. So FSC means how effective is it? Like I said, our EPA is our Environmental Protection Agency, and our EPA registration number has to be on everything. So the EPA approves the effectiveness of this product in use for infection control. So the manufacturers make the product, they give it to the EPA, they evaluate it, and then they say, yes, you can use it, or no, you can't. So also ensure that it is safe and it is effective. So we have EPA registered hospital disinfectants. That's what we're going to be using. We're going to be using that in our disinfectants, right? So it has to be bactericidal, virucidal, and fungicidal, and it has to have the efficacy, so the effective demonstration against Salmonella and Streptlicoxy. So there you go, also known as a broad spectrum disinfectant. Hospital has to have the same thing, but like I said, we're going more for these broad spectrums, hospital grades, because they're going to kill against bloodborne pathogens. OSHA came out in 1985 with the Bloodborne Pathogen Act saying that we have to have it. So bloodborne pathogens, EPA and OSHA, right? They both have these things with bloodborne pathogens. So OSHA is going to say that the labeling on the products have to have the ingredients, the hazards, the combustion levels, the storage requirements. How's it going to work for us? You have to provide these safety data sheets to us, right? So what happens when we get any kind of product or any kind of chemical in the shop? Say I'm going to be using Clorox bleach to clean my toilet. I'm going to have to go and look online, pull up a SDS sheet for Clorox bleach and put it in a folder on my desktop so that I'll have that. So if anything happens and State Board comes in and they say, where's your SDS sheets? I can pull up my folders and show them, here they are. This is what I have. Okay. The EPA is going to give us this registration number that's going to inform us on the effectiveness for things like Hep B, HIV, that type of thing. So there are standards that they say that we have to have against these diseases and things like that. Now, OSHA. Just about every SDS sheet I've ever looked for is online. But if you can't find it online, you call the manufacturer. You're like, hey, boom, I need a SDS sheet for whatever I have. They'll tell you where to find it. If they don't, they're supposed to mail it to you. If you don't, then you call OSHA and you're like, hey, I tried it, an SDS sheet for blah, 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 and they never gave it to me. Nobody wants OSHA called on them. So believe me, they're going to definitely have these sheets for you to use. Okay, so those are just some of the things that EPA and OSHA do. So become familiar with those. So types of disinfectants that are approved in our industry is a solution, which would probably need to dilute, the spray, and the wipes. Okay, wipes are becoming more and more popular now. So if you buy the ones that you can get at like the beauty supplies, I mean, Barbicide's a really popular one. Lucaside is a very popular one. They used to have, that's probably about all I've seen lately. I know they have a ship shape or something like that. But that one takes, it's like a granule and you mix it into the water, but that one takes like an hour to disinfect stuff. It takes a long time. They used to have stuff that would eat the hair out of your brushes and things like that, but they quit making that, which made me cry because I liked that. Just throw your stuff in there and let it set. There was no cleaning it, it'd eat it all away. And then you just put it into your disinfection solution. Okay, strops and leather holsters. Now, they're porous. They cannot be disinfected. We can't even use them in the state of California. But just know that these cute little things that we're using, like the sheer pouches that are, the leather or the vinyl that keep our stuff nice, we cannot use those because guess what? They cannot be disinfected. So, can't even use a conventional razor. So just know that we cannot disinfect this stuff. So how do we disinfect? We remove all the hair, wash it with soap and water, rinse it and dry it, immerse it in our disinfection solution, remove it with tongs or gloves, rinse it, dry it, and store it in a clean covered container. You should know that for sure. Quaternary ammonium compound, quats, this is usually what we're using. Sodium hypochlorite is just regular bleach. Accelerated hydrogen peroxide. This is not toxic to the skin. And then phenolic germicidal detergent and carbolic acid are like tuberculocidal disinfectants. Alcohol is a poor disinfectant because it requires 20 to 30 minutes. So most of the time what we're going to find is going to be a mixture of the quats and then the phenolic germicidals. And for some reason, I know with weird trivia in my mind that quats is mixed at 1/1000th part per million. I don't know why, but just make sure that you wear your gloves and you follow all manufacturers' directions. So should you discard it or should you disinfect it? Anything that is porous or it's a single use, you disinfect, right? Neck strips, cotton balls, wooden sticks, things like that. Anything that is porous goes in the trash. Why those little like Velcro clips that work, they work really good, but I'm still very leery on those because it's a porous, it's material. I know they say, the manufacturers say that you can put them in the disinfectant solution, but it still makes me really leery about what state board's going to say, even though the manufacturer says one thing. What does state board say? Okay, so we know about that. Precautions and disposal of related items. Just always follow the manufacturer's directions on mixing and disposing. Okay. Sterilization is the third level, which this kills everything. It requires the use of a liquid sterilant or moist and dry heat, which we don't really use, but sterilization kills everything. Disinfection kills bacteria, usually the ones that are harmful to us, and cleaning just removes dirt and debris, right? During disinfection, we need to use an EPA registered disinfectant. Cleaning is basically with like soap and water and countertops. Read these over and familiarize yourself because I know that the test questions are going to say things like, which level of disinfection is appropriate for cleaning, or which level of disinfection would you use for countertops, sinks, floors, and toilets? Would you use disinfection or would you use, those are the types of things that you'll need to know for the test. So figure out, read over this and make yourself familiar with what's what. Okay. So true or false? Infection control is the term used to describe efforts to prevent the spread of communicable diseases. I'm going to say that one's true. Infection control practices can be divided into four main process of scrubbing to remove dirt, debris, and potential pathogens to aid in, I just came up across it and I can't read it. Oh, in slowing the growth of pathogens is the infection control practice of, I want to say, cleaning. Second level is disinfection. And then the regulatory agency under the Department of Labor that enforces safety and health standards in the workplace is OSHA. What does OSHA stand for? Occupational Health and Safety Administration. Yeah, know that one, okay. The ability to produce results or effectiveness describes, do you remember that word? Efficacy? Efficacy would be the one. The agency that approves the efficacy of products used for the infection control is and then that would be the Environmental Protection Agency. And then when working with disinfectants, always follow the manufacturer's instructions, wear gloves, and I believe they want you to wear safety goggles. Porous items considered to be disposable are also described as single use. And sterilization is considered the most effective method of infection control that kills or destroys everything, what? Bacterial spores, protective spores, all bacteria. I don't know what they want on that one. Let's see, false, cleaning, disinfection, OSHA, okay. Oh, microbial life. That's what they wanted on that one. All right, so the last one on this is first aid. So go ahead and check that one out yourselves because it's not that hard for first aid. And then we will take the test on this Friday. I'm gonna say Friday. So I'll give you a few times to study, and then if you have any questions, you could ask me. Oh, actually, no, wait, what am I saying? We have tomorrow. We can do Wednesday. Threw me off. So yeah, we can do it tomorrow. All right, you guys have any questions? I know we went through it kind of fast, but I know we've been through it before too. So let's get this finished then. Do you have a question, Nick? All right, so y'all have a good day, and we'll see you tomorrow. We'll go through first aid. Okay.
All right. Have a good day.